welcome into another playoff edition of Daily Faceoff Live, a Friday edition of the show. As always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app, use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We're live on the DFO YouTube looking for your inbox questions for later on. Frank, Friday, let's go.
Let's go. Let's do better than the Canes did last night.
Well, the way that series is going, my lead into this was going to be, this could be, call it the final jam-packed weekend of NHL hockey we get this season, because by next weekend, the Canes might be done. We're going to do our off-season preview in the big segment today. Our friend Rob Rossi will join us from Pittsburgh to talk a little Penguins. We'll talk Shanahan and more. But first, it was all Cats all night. They score a minute 17 in, and they just never take their foot off the gas. A 5-0 win for the Florida Panthers as they take both road games to open up the Eastern Conference Final. And Frank, it's not just the fact that Carolina's down 2-0. It's the fact that last night, yes, Carolina dominance, but that felt like the first time this Canes team had like truly no-showed. Is that too harsh? Like under 20 shots, Frank, when you look at how they generated just shots on goal throughout the entire playoffs, this is an insane outlier.
I mean, I think no-show feels a little bit harsh. I think what I would say is no answer, right? No pushback. Like it's not so much that the Canes aren't good or aren't a good team. It's that they don't have a solution for how to beat the Florida Panthers. They are a team that is just at this point in time looks to be head and shoulders above the Carolina Hurricanes. And that sometimes is what happens. It's kind of rare, I think, in this sport, particularly this postseason, that you see a team jump out to a pretty significant series lead and have the score be on the games in the series scoreboard be exactly indicative of what that action has been like on the ice. And I'd say this is probably as close as we've been to that. Like the Panthers have blown the doors off the Canes, and it is that ferocious Florida attack that even for a team that defends really well and excels with their structure, they've really struggled to handle it. And I think that part stands out.
382 shots through 12 games for the Hurricanes, just 17 last night. That's one side of this. The other side of it too, the numbers from Freddie Anderson are crazy. I mean, he was virtually unbeatable, and granted, a lot of that was what was happening in front of him too, but like his numbers were just sparkling. Then you compare it to this series where he doesn't even make it into the third period last night. He's pulled for Pyotr Kochetkov, and like it's funny, like the numbers still for the playoffs don't even look bad, which is again a comment on how good he was earlier. But I'm struggling to see it with the way Anderson's played, with the way they're playing in front of him. I'm struggling to see a path forward here for Carolina. And this is a Florida team that, sure, you could say they almost blew a 3-0 lead in last year's Cup final, but they don't feel like a team who lets opportunities like this just wither away.
Not with this difference in class, I think. And nighty-night. That's really how it feels watching game two. That was the Carolina Hurricanes' chance to get in this series, to square it off at 1-1 and head to Florida with a puncher's chance to get back into this. Dropping both games on the road with a team that good, that's that much bigger than you and that much more physical and deeper, to be quite honest. Like I don't see the opportunity. I don't see the path. You'd have to squint incredibly hard. And I think this is a Florida Panthers team that's on its way back to a third consecutive Stanley Cup final. I think it's as simple as that. And the commentary on Freddie Anderson is, I think he's a structure goalie, a system goalie, the guy that plays really well with that team in front of him when they're firing on all cylinders. And I think they're a team that probably makes most goalies look pretty good with the way that they play. So it's not a knock against him. You still have to go out and do it and put up the numbers. But the fact that everything else has collapsed around him and his numbers have been poor, they kind of go hand in hand.
Two more things before we move off of this. One, Armando Velez on Twitter pointed this out. Go back to 2023 on May 22nd, Sergei Bobrovsky shuts out the Carolina Hurricanes. A year later, he shuts out the New York Rangers. A year after that, May 22nd again, it's been three straight years where Sergei Bobrovsky has played a playoff game on May 22nd, and he has a shutout in every one of those games. Just a weird little statistical quirk or coincidence, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely weird. And I'm glad you brought him up, because that's another scary part for the Canes is like, let's say they figured out a better way to manage Florida's attack. Okay. How do they get on the board? Bobrovsky's starting to cook. He had 2 poor games against the Leafs to start last round, and since then, he's been excellent. So I don't look at any spot that the Florida Panthers have right at this exact moment in time and say that there's an apparent weakness. Bobrovsky has shored up any question mark that existed there.
Yeah, and then the last thing was Sam Bennett with 2 goals in that hockey game. The cash register signs going off, at least in his agent's head. I'm sure Sam Bennett's not focused about July 1 or free agency, but his play some team might be looking at that and all of a sudden going, maybe I would give him $9 million a year.
I appreciate the candor and how excited everyone is for Sam Bennett's free agency, but and I know that the cap's going up and it's only going to take one team. But if we arrive at a moment in time where, and I saw this also on social media, if we arrive at a moment in time where Sam Bennett is earning more or the same in AAV as Barkov or Matthew Tkachuk, I think we've probably jumped the shark a little bit.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. It feels like both him and Ekblad might be ripe for an overpay on July 1 with all this Panthers playoff success. Frank, this from Jason Greger, our friend from the DFO Rundown. Teams who win game 1 of the conference final on the road are 12-5 in the series. Now that it's 2-0 Florida, that number obviously skews even way harder. But teams who win game 1 of the conference final at home are just 11-10 in the salary cap era. So the Dallas Stars, while they should feel, again, good that they stormed back and won game 1, it doesn't exactly give them a huge statistical edge. For the Oilers, trying to get the split is the mission. And one thing that they've been good at over the last 2 playoffs is bouncing back from a loss. In the last 2 postseasons, the Oilers are 8-4 when coming off an L. What do you need to see tonight from the Oilers to avoid going down 0-2 in Dallas?
Saves from Stuart Skinner. I'll start and finish there. I mean, I think, look, we talked about this in depth yesterday, and I don't want to harp on it too much. But when I listen to Leon Draisaitl say we need to get a kill, I think that's been misconstrued as him being critical of the penalty kill, when I viewed that as directly him pointing at Stuart Skinner and saying, gotta get a stop. That's really the bottom line. And I'm not saying it's all on him, because the parade to the penalty box was stupid at times. And definitely there are some weaknesses and or openings in the kill. But as I mentioned to you, it is acceptable to get a save. It's acceptable, permissible for your goalie to bail you out every now and again when everything collapses around you. And there just isn't enough of that from Stuart Skinner. He's binary. 2 shutouts, 4 games of 833 or below. There's no middle ground, none. And so just how about a solid effort? How about just we don't need you to go out and win the game for us. We just need you to give us a chance to win. And in the third period, up 3-1, Stuart Skinner did not give the Edmonton Oilers a chance to win. So say what you want about the penalty kill and everything else. I'm sorry, it still comes back to the goaltending. And of the 4 teams or
shoot a puck, I think they need those pieces playing next to McDavid and Draisaitl. They need a little bit more from those guys. I think that would certainly help in this game 2 tonight. And if you're Dallas, I think you're, not crossing your fingers and hoping, but you're looking at the play of Duchesne, the play of Tyler Seguin. I think Tyler Seguin might have been their best forward in game 1. You're sitting there going, don't just be a one-off. Don't be a one-off. If those guys are ready to get hot, then again, that's a massive swing towards Dallas.
And probably shouldn't be that surprising in the sense that look at what really underperformed heading into round 3, the Stars' depth. Look at what probably, if we're all being honest, overperformed a little bit was the Edmonton Oilers' depth. Those 2 things are kind of counteracting each other at the same exact time. And that's what you see is a little bit of a swing. I'm not saying it's going to remain like that. We're talking limited sample size, not an 82 game series. You only need 1 good round in order for that to swing back the other direction. So it's entirely possible that the Oilers group stays hot. It's also entirely possible that the Stars' depth finds a way to shine through, which should be one of their real strong suits of their roster and their game.
Game 2 tonight in Dallas. Game 3, a 3:00 Eastern matinee, 1:00 local in Edmonton on Sunday. Frank, let's move away from the playoffs for a little bit. The news yesterday, we touched on this in our Ask DFO question, but it's official. Brendan Shanahan is not coming back with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so it puts an end to the Shanaplan. And listen, on one hand, I think if you would have told Leafs fans back when he was hired 11 seasons ago, hey, you're going to make the playoffs in 9 of the next 11 seasons, they probably would have been like, that is tremendous. That's a win. the fact that it's only the 2 playoff rounds won, the playoff record being 8 games below 500. I know there was technically a North Division title in there, so call it 2 division titles in 11 years. They won the Atlantic, obviously, just the one time. How would you sum up Shanahan's tenure with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
It's a mixed bag, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for turning around the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, really kind of from the beginning of the salary cap era on. The Leafs were a laughingstock. I mean, think about all the coaches that they had ran through, the end of the Phil Kessel era, all those other things that came with it. It was a really difficult time to be a fan of the Leafs. And with the way that he came in and righted the ship, restored really important cultural pieces, made the Leafs a proud franchise that everyone can rally around in that market, I think has been incredibly impactful. And there's no doubt that he put them on a much better path to success when it comes to the things that have played out over these last 9 consecutive years in the playoffs. But to me, the big flaw, the big error goes right back to, speaking of the North Division, the year that they blew the 3-1 series lead against the Montreal Canadiens. It stands out as a moment in time where there probably should have been a bigger call to action to change the core of the team and the makeup of the team. It was too much, too long, too comfortable. And part of that is due to an unwavering belief that he had in the group to get it done, which I can admire from a certain perspective. But just because you keep ramming your head against a cinder block wall, it doesn't mean that you're going to break through eventually. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And in this case, that faith, that trust, that over belief in this Toronto Maple Leafs core is what cost Brendan Shanahan his job in the end. It's the results-oriented business that, as much as you can talk about playoff games and 100-point seasons and everything else that comes with it, having, just for comparison's sake, over that same span of time, the Vancouver Canucks missed 6 playoff appearances compared to the Leafs in that exact amount of time, and they have more rounds won. Is anyone in Vancouver sitting back going, oh man, we are a model franchise, look at all the success that we've had? It's not really as successful as they've been. There's not really that much to hang their hat on. And I think that's where they're kind of left at this moment in time, grasping, trying to figure out how to get there.
I saw some people yesterday saying, hey, now that Shanahan's gone, no one in that core group should feel safe. But Brad Treliving is staying on as the GM. So do you think this Shanahan news, does it have any sort of like a big swing on how the Leafs will handle things this offseason?
I don't think it has much of a swing because I think some of those things were probably already in motion anyway. Like, I think whether Shanahan was there or not, Mitch Marner is probably going to market. I think Brad Treliving is just likely to be the direct report right to CEO Keith Pelly, and he'll run the organization much kind of in the same way that he did in Calgary and is used to that. So that said, probably more business as usual. And they're going to look to reinvent themselves and be a different team this time around next season with finally, really for the first time, a truly different core and mix. This is a very shocking result. It's shocking, because of, you think big game goalie Jordan Binnington, he falters. A team with Sidney Crosby and Macklin Celebrini and all these guys that have been huge parts, Nathan McKinnon, Ryan O'Reilly, huge parts of deep playoff runs and success, spitting the bid against Denmark. Just not really something that I saw coming, but I'm glad that our friend Rob Rossi is coming on next, because this is certainly far from a shocking and the first shocking, disappointing early playoff exit for a team that Kyle Dubas presides over.
Just quickly, Stephen Ellis is in our YouTube chat. He says they had a massive party last night in Copenhagen, biggest win in Denmark's history. And he also said Frederick Ditchow, who was the goalie, stopping 38 of 39. He's the heir apparent to Freddie Anderson going forward. But the world's obviously get a lot more interesting with Canada out of the mix. Let's get to our big segment for the day. It's brought to you by Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. So phone a bud, text a bud, and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, the playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Make them count with Budweiser. Always a pleasure to be joined by Rob Rossi from The Athletic. And Rob, let's start in Pittsburgh in the coaching search for the man Frank just mentioned, Kyle Dubas. What do you make of this? Is he going to be looking for someone with experience? Is he maybe willing to go a little bit more off the board than we think? What's the latest on Dubas and the Penguins head coaching search? Oh, Rob, you might be muted.
Sorry. Let me.
There you go. You're good.
How's that?
We got
good
you.
now?
Yep.
All right. I do think there's a chance he goes off the board in terms of a candidate that is certainly in the Mike Sullivan elk. I don't think this is going to be a candidate that has a lot of if it has NHL experience, I wouldn't expect it to be a ton of successful NHL experience. I think, from what I've been told, he's looking at guys that are in sort of the mold of a teacher, somebody that can come in and work with some of their younger prospects, and going forward, work with people that'll be brought in that are younger term players. So to that regard, yes, I think it'll be off the board. I wouldn't rule out that he picks somebody from Europe, or at least somebody that's coaching a European team right now. I think Kyle had an idea of what he wanted in terms of the type. I think the coaching candidates he had in mind coming into this job, if he were going to replace Mike Sullivan early, aren't the same candidates he's looking at now for where this job is.
That's what I was going to ask. Why is that? Is that because the expectations have changed?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kyle's not said it, but it's very clear they are in a rebuild. I mean, you can't look at the moves they've made since trading Jake Gensel and including the dismissal or the parting of ways, as they called it, of Mike Sullivan, and not say this is a franchise that's in a rebuild. It is. I mean, it just happens to be a franchise in a rebuild with a lot of guys who make up their core who have won the Stanley Cup. But those guys are older. We're probably looking at the last year of the big three because of getting Malkin's contracts up. And I don't expect him to continue playing in the NHL after this season. So, that's where we're headed. Pittsburgh does not have a lot of prospects in their system that are higher end guys. They don't really have a potential impact prospect other than Sergei Murashov, the goaltender, and he's only 20 years old. They need young impact prospects. They need players that are younger, period. They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years. They were further from that this year than they were the previous two. This is not going to be a situation where it's a quick fix. I tell people, I don't see the Penguins contending again for a Stanley Cup, which is what Kyle Dubas is saying is the goal, and which is what I've been told ownership wants. I don't see them doing that again this decade. So the coach of this team next year might not even be around when that situation, if it comes to pass. Okay,
so let's play a little game. What percentage chance would you put on that changing on a dime? And the reason I ask that is because of all the places that we're trying to cook up, hey, where does Mitch Marner land next? I'm saying he's got trust in and a relationship with Pittsburgh's general manager. And, oh, by the way, we can give you a spot on Sidney Crosby's wing, which is a pretty attractive position, in addition to an absolute pile of money. What are the odds that they make this coaching hire and then in short order, the expectation is, hey, we've got an opportunity, a window here with the mushy middle that is the Eastern Conference to sneak in and grab one of those 7 or 8 seeds?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I've heard that the relationship between Marner and Dubas is what it was. It doesn't mean it's soured. I just haven't heard that it's necessarily as cozy as it used to be. I don't get the sense that with the revenue the way it is in Pittsburgh right now, they're going to want to do a big contract like that for a player, even a player of Marner's skill and age. Certainly Sidney Crosby would want that. I mean, he wants to have this team, he wants to know why this team can't do what the Washington Capitals are doing, which is, rebuilding
Fair
around
question.
Alex Ovechkin for a team. But the problem with that is the Capitals had a real stroke of luck with legacy guys going on LTIR. The Penguins don't have that. Yeah, even if they were to add an impact guy like Marner, their defense and goaltending is going to be so bad next year that I don't see them being anywhere close to a 7 or 8 seed, even with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just had one more. Pat, if you could just throw up the Penguins offseason board again one more time. Right at the bottom here, the draft picks. They've got 2 listed. Do you think the Penguins have a preference on how this Rangers pick is handled with regards to when they give it up?
I think they would prefer to have the pick next year just because next year's draft class is purportedly deeper. And if you have an extra pick next year, maybe you can move up into the draft if you don't get lottery luck. But the Rangers didn't hire Mike Sullivan because they expect to be picking in the lottery again. So I think that the Penguins did themselves an immense disservice. And I don't blame the coaches or the players. Their job is to win. I thought they did an immense disservice to their organization by not being more aggressive at the deadline to sell even more players. I think it's pushed this rebuild back a couple of years because everybody in Pittsburgh, when I talk to them, they're like, well, they wouldn't have won the draft lottery anyway. Well, yeah, but if they didn't win their final 2 games, or if they didn't get 4 points in their final 6 games, they finish 5th, which means they only fall to 7th. And when you are moribund of, look, Kyle's done a good job of improving the system, but the system still doesn't have a guy that's going to come in and sort of change this culture. So, yeah, I think this was a disaster of a post deadline for them, including with the way the lottery fell. And now you're not, you're going to pick what, 12th and 13th or 13th and 14th, whatever it is. Those are still lottery tickets, I guess, but it's not what it could be.
I wanted to circle back to what you were saying about the blue line, that it's just going to be bad next year. And yeah, like looking at the guys who are still under contract and even the names who were there last year, I'm presuming they let most of them walk, the UFAs. But is there any path forward to them quickly fixing that? Like, I know Frank was talking about Marner, but like, wouldn't it maybe make more sense to like go chase a defenseman in free agency? Or is that just lining up Ryan Graves 2.0 and it's not even worth doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle's pretty snake bitten by that. I think he's going to try to trade Erik Karlsson. I don't know what the market's going to be for Erik Karlsson. I know that most of the actual money has already been paid to Erik Karlsson. So now it's a matter of the cap hit. Would the Penguins be willing to retain? I think Chris Letang is unmovable right now with his decline in play and having the surgery to correct the heart issue. I don't think people will take a risk on that contract. Yeah, I mean, Ryan Graves, goodness. I mean, I think if Kyle was praying to the hockey gods, it would be Ryan Graves or Tristan Jarry, either one, please, please, please. Yeah, I don't think you could fix this defense core by making signings. I think you just have to look. I mean, Sidney Crosby and his agent don't want to hear this. Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin and Erik Karlsson and Brian Rust don't want to hear this. The best thing for the Penguins as an organization is for next year to be even worse than the previous year, and to hope that the next 2 or 3 years they can get the type of draft luck that, look, they're not gonna go 4 years in a row where they draft Marc-Andre Fleury, Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, and Jordan Staal, 4, 3 Hall of Famers, and Stahl's probably borderline. But if they could get a guy like Malkin, Stahl, or Fleury, or even a Stahl or a Fleury, if they could get one of those type of guys in the next couple of drafts, that would be huge for them. But yeah, there's no way to quick fix this. I don't know that there's a way to long fix this.
It's going to be another interesting offseason in Pittsburgh.
Could be worse, though. They could be Hockey Canada today, right?
I suppose. Rob, appreciate your time as always, man. I know you're doing some coverage over at The Athletic for the Eastern Conference Final as well, so people can go read you there. Thanks for popping on.
Take care, guys.
All right, Frank, I know you hate the whole Canes get swept in every Eastern Conference Final stat, but Brian asks one. Is Rob Brindamore's job in trouble if they get swept again?
No. No, the answer is Rod Brindamore has a job for life in Carolina. I don't think he'll work anywhere else, to be quite honest. And with that, I truly believe that the Carolina Hurricanes organizational thought is, even if they don't have success this time around, remember, this was supposed to be a relative step back year. They let a lot of guys go. The Metropolitan Division is relatively weak. Let's see how many times we can get to the Eastern Conference Final, and maybe one of these years we'll break through to the Cup Final and win. That's the thought. I can't even say that it's a bad thought, because you're getting to the Final Four many times. Chances are you'll find a way one of those years, and the team coming out of the Atlantic won't be as good.
GM of the Year is voted on by their peers, Frank, and the finalists were announced today. They are Kevin Cheveldayoff, Jim Nill, and Bill Zito. If you had to pick a GM of the Year, who would it be?
That's a good question. It probably would not be Kevin Cheveldayoff, because I don't think he did enough to help the team at the deadline. Jim Nill pulls off a massive deal getting Mikko Rantanen, but I would probably go with Bill Zito among this group of three, because look, they added two majorly significant pieces to their team in Seth Jones and Brad Marchand, really without having to give up a whole ton. I mean, their first round pick probably isn't going to be a huge deal because it's so late. And Spencer Knight is still behind Sergei Bobrovsky anyway and wasn't going to be starting. If you can wring out another cup from this team, I mean, you now also have real term on Jones, where he's been a rejuvenated piece. You've got him in your lineup for the next handful of years. He's that body. He's physically going to age very well. He's an effortless skater.
I'll give you another one, and again, not to be all Oilers, whatever, but Doug Armstrong in St. Louis. Obviously, the offer sheets, but that trade for Cam Fowler was one of the best trades that happened in season. I look at how he got Jake Neighbors signed for 2 more years under $4 million. That's a guy who pops you 20 goals like that. I think Doug Armstrong's done an excellent job in St. Louis.
Yeah, and I would say there's lots of other sort of lowercase candidates. The coaching change in St. Louis was also pretty impactful. I like what the Sens did to fix their blue line and get in the playoffs. I think Craig Patrick and his team made a lot of smart moves in, I called him Craig, it's Chris Patrick in Washington. They were the top seed in the East. And look, Minnesota made the playoffs in a year in which they had massive injuries. They didn't make it the year prior, and they've still been carrying a $15 million cap hit on dead space. They've made the playoffs like 4 out of the 5 years they had that space locked up, or whatever it was, 3 out of the 4. That's how many other teams could withstand lopping off that much cap space and still find a way to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it is wildly impressive. I just looked at the clock, Frank. We're giving the people a lot of extra time today on a Friday. We're working OT by 2 minutes. Let's get to our daily bets for Bet365, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Want to get in on the action? At Bet365, they got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line. You can even bet on futures like series winners and, of course, the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Connor McDavid, Mikko Rantanen, hitting their shot props again. I love it. Plus 130. It crushed for me in game 1, so why not run it back? And then it's Friday, so a goal scorer parlay. Zach Hyman hasn't scored in 5 games. You love when I say it, Frank. He's due. Also, Mikael Granlund gets top power play minutes, gets top line minutes, and I don't think he should be priced where he is for this hockey game. He scored in game 1 on just a laser of a shot, but he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th on the Dallas Stars list in goal scorers. So Hyman and Granlund, 14-1. Why not? Granlund straight up at 375 is great too.
Yeah, that's juicy at plus 1400. Let's go.
There you go. We'll wrap up the show, Frank, on a little light note. Garbage time. It's Brad Marchand, the rat, who's fitting in well in Florida, and the new post-game tradition, Homer on the road. They shoot the plastic rats at Brad Marchand. Paul Maurice after the game saying he loved it, but Marchand fits in perfectly with the Panthers and the Rats.
He does. I mean, honestly, it's so easy to see the path for him to stay there because they have success. He's a huge part of it, and It's a guy that almost feels like, even I know you said earlier this week that like, all right, you're finally getting used to seeing Brad Marchand in a Panthers uniform. In a real odd way, I feel like he's been wearing it for so much longer because he's just become a part of the fabric of that team already. And I think also highlights just how much the Bruins are going to miss him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is a wrap. We got 3 Stanley Cup playoff games coming this weekend, and it could be, like I said earlier, the final weekend of the year where we have that much hockey. So kick back, enjoy, and I'll be back with you. Everyone in the States, have a great long weekend, by the way. Want to throw that out there. And then Monday, I got Carter Hutton riding shotgun with me, so we'll see you then at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.